England. So I want to talk about the Ukraine conflict and the role of the United States therein. And obviously, the United States is the linchpin of NATO. Without NATO, so without the United States, NATO would have half the military strength it does at the moment and might well fall apart. The United States, the largest economy in the world, and all the rest of it. And so many Ukrainians were inspired by the American model. No, they didn't necessarily want to have exactly the same voting system as the United States, or it's that they could replicate its constitution. But that American model, more broadly Western model of liberal democracy, was one highly appealing to them and prosperity, but allowing them into NATO and obviously the European Union, not that the United States is a member of the European Union or aspires to be. And so the United States being the arsenal of democracy, and I don't want to be too blinkedly pro-American. I mustn't blow their trumpet too much, because obviously the United States has been unrighteous in some of its conflicts, and that's the case with every country. But anyway, so Joe Biden's been visiting Europe, was in Poland in particular, met some Ukrainian refugees and Ukrainian politicians, and really flying the flag, signaling that he's going to bolster support for them, and looking like it's going to be a victory of a NATO ally. I mean, maybe not outright victory. Putin might go to grab something, but be a fraction of what he aspired to do. Anyhow, but Biden really put his foot in it. Joe Biden said that Putin cannot stay in power. Ouch. Up until this point, the United States has been very careful to say they do not seek regime change. Should Putin be the president of Russia or not, that is for the Russians to sort out. The United States is not trying to encourage anybody to overthrow him or even people to vote against him, because then that makes it personal, and then Putin thinks that if he retreats, then he loses power, then this is going to help the United States to overthrow him. Now, the thing is, he might believe that anyway, but simply reinforces paranoid delusions. So the White House quickly backtracked after that allocution and said, no, Putin's presidency is an internal matter, and it's definitely not an objective of ours to oust him. You know, the Russians have been upping the ante, launching airstrikes on Lviv, which is the main Ukrainian city near the Polish border, the westernmost of their major cities, so coming perilously close to the NATO border. So did Biden misspeak? I suppose so. It was a gaffe, because it'd make it harder to arrive at a peace deal. But other than that, NATO's really buoyed up because of the progress the Ukrainians are making. I mean, this mustn't be exaggerated. The Russians still occupy like at least 10% of Ukraine, and there's still well over 100,000 Russian troops on Ukrainian soil. Russia could draw upon hundreds of thousands of more. They will struggle to supply them. The ones who are fighting in Ukraine, they've often been living in vehicles and tents since November in some cases. So this debilitates their health. Their morale is said to be low while they're surrendering, maybe surrendering in droves, possibly deserting. And various communication intercepts suggesting this is a problem. You know, that morale is at rock bottom. So they need to be replaced by fresh troops. But the trouble is, they're conscripts. You know, they just did their 1-year military service, and by the time the decent soldiers there left, and some of them were only conscripts for a few months, were sent in. Others are not conscripts. Only about 30% of the Russian army is comprised of conscripts. They're those who sign up for several years or even do a full career. They have a much better idea what they're doing. I do feel America may be leading the West with Ukraine. He is holding the presses, etc. No one else, God only knows, how it be under Mr. Corbyn. Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure about Corbyn. Certainly Diane Abbott said, oh, well, NATO's has contributed to the problem and raised tensions by sending weapons. Well, as they're allowed to do to a sovereign country, which is being attacked unprovokedly and so on. And I thought I might do a video about these tankies, about these leftist polezny idiot. There's some right-wingers as well who are like that, who will do anything to invent excuses for Vladimir Putin's illegal wars of aggression, the illegal occupation of various countries, and the numerous atrocities that he's perpetrated in several different countries. Particularly Ukraine, Syria, to a less extent Georgia, even Libya, his mercenaries, Wagner group there. I know he poses as an anti-Nazi despite actually bearing one of the hallmarks of fascism himself. So anyway, it was probably one foolish moment in Biden's speech in an otherwise ringing endorsement of the Ukrainian cause, and it was a bravura oration in other respects, saying that that we stand with you. it'll go down well. What effect will this all have on the domestic American scene? I mean, certainly Biden's stock has risen because that wasn't hard in a sense because his approval rating was in the doldrums. People were even going to say that that Trump could even beat him next time. It was perilously close between them. But we know that being tough on the world stage, that's something that redounds to the advantage of an incumbent president. Remember, we've got these midterms coming up in November. That's still a fairly long way off. And I don't think Biden's rating is going to stay that high, but some of his actions, they've driven inflation even higher. Oil prices have gone even higher, so that's going to hurt America economically. That's one of the things that Putin is counting on. That in the longer run, the advantage will tip his way. And are the Democrats going to be absolutely decimated in the midterm elections? I mean, I think they are, because they held the Senate by the narrowest of majorities, really just the casting vote of the vice president, and they held the House of Representatives by a fairly narrow majority, and they were probably going to lose those anyway, but they might lose those badly, which doesn't bode well for 2024. And we know that the Republicans will try every dirty trick to refuse to certify Biden's re-election if indeed he is re-elected. So that's all worrying for the internal scene. But for the moment, the Republican Party seems to be foursquare behind it. Engaged with the realist Mearsheimer, who agree fundamentally that expansion has caused this crisis. Well, no, I think it's obviously Russia's unacceptance of Ukrainian independence has caused this crisis. Ukraine has the absolute right to join NATO or any military alliance. Russia's a member of military alliances. They never asked Ukraine's permission whether they could do so. Ukraine has the unconditional right to its territorial integrity and to its sovereignty, which Russia recognized again in 1994 via the Budapest Memorandum, when Ukraine gave them all the nuclear weapons for free in return for these guarantees. And Ukraine has never laid a violent hand upon them. So, okay, so what if NATO hadn't expanded, hadn't even talked about expanding? I mean, Russia was trying to take over Ukraine indirectly in 2004, might well have succeeded, and having effectively a satrapy of Moscow. This has sort of brought the matter to the brook. One of the reasons that NATO was so attractive to Ukraine is because they face this Russian threat. If Russia hadn't been menacing them, hadn't tried to murder their president in 2004 with poison, the Ukrainians might not have felt so impelled to seek the sanctuary of a mighty military alliance, NATO. If Russia had been a better trade partner, there had been some better economic model, then Ukraine might not have been so attracted to joining the European Union. Anyway, thank you for watching my channel, so please donate to me on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Toodaloo.